The stars were never silent anymore. Alarms echoed through every communication channel in the known galaxy. The warnings came first as faint signals, then as desperate cries for help. Somewhere far beyond the rim of the Milky Way, something dark had awakened, something no species had words to describe. The only message that reached the interstellar network said the same thing over and over: run. Entire civilizations began abandoning their worlds. Fleets of shining ships, once symbols of pride, became lines of refugees moving through space like frightened shadows. Cities that had stood for thousands of years were left empty, floating in the silence of orbit. The galaxies that had spent centuries building peace together now fell into chaos and fear. But in one corner of the stars, on a small blue planet called Earth, humanity did not run. At first, the humans received the same warnings as everyone else. Scientists tried to decode the strange energy readings. Politicians gave speeches filled with calm words that didn't match their worried faces. People on Earth saw the news and asked questions no one could answer. What was coming? How close was it? Could anyone stop it? Other species didn't wait to find out. Their leaders ordered full evacuation. Whole fleets vanished overnight. Space stations once filled with trade and laughter now drifted dark and empty. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy looked truly abandoned. Yet humanity stayed. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was stubbornness. Or maybe it was because humans had always known what it felt like to face the impossible and keep going. Their history was full of moments when everything seemed lost. Wars, disasters, cold nights with no light except the small fire of human will. They had survived all that, so why not this? When the first alien envoys came to Earth, they were horrified to find humans still building defenses instead of preparing to flee. The envoys warned that the force approaching was unstoppable, that even their most advanced fleets had been torn apart like dust. Humanity listened carefully. Then they simply said, "Thank you for the warning. No promises to leave. No plans to run. Just calm determination." On Earth, factories began working day and night. Engineers modified old spacecraft into defense carriers. Scientists turned research satellites into weapon platforms. Farmers sent food to the colonies so soldiers could stay fed. Even school children helped by collecting supplies. Everyone, in one way or another, joined the effort. The message spread through the human colonies like a heartbeat. We hold the line. The first weeks were filled with fear, but also with purpose. Spaceports were crowded not with people trying to escape, but with those volunteering to stay. There was no talk of survival statistics or retreat plans. There was only one goal: protect home. On Luna Base, an engineer stood watching the stars. She could see the distant glow of other worlds where ships were leaving. Her colleagues whispered that those species had technology far greater than humanity's, yet they still fled. It made her wonder what kind of creature could terrify the entire galaxy. Then she smiled faintly and muttered, "If it bleeds, we'll find a way to stop it." That small sentence spread across the interlink like wildfire. It became a motto for the defense effort. Soldiers painted it on their armor. Pilots carved it into the hulls of their ships. Even the artificial intelligence systems managing communications began quoting it when giving status reports. It was strange, maybe even foolish, but it felt right. Soon the evacuation of non-combatants began. Families were moved from the outer colonies to safer stations closer to Earth. Many cried, not because they were leaving, but because they felt guilty for not staying to help. Humanity was not running, but they were organizing, preparing, calculating every possible scenario. One evening, on the orbital station above Mars, the commanders gathered. Holographic maps filled the room with swirling colors showing enemy trajectories. They could see how quickly the threat was moving, consuming system after system like fire through dry grass. A quiet settled over the room as they realized how little time was left. Yet no one said the word retreat. They began assigning units, creating fallback points, designing traps within asteroid belts. Every plan had one thing in common. It ended at Earth. No matter what happened, no matter how many battles were lost, the final defense would be at humanity's home. The months that followed changed everyone. On the ground, people lived with constant tension, yet the streets were not filled with panic. There was fear, yes, but it walked hand in hand with pride. Neighbors helped one another reinforce shelters. Old factories reopened to build armor plating. Even artists and musicians contributed, filling the air with songs and murals that reminded people what they were fighting for. While other species scattered into the darkness, humanity grew stronger in unity. They didn't have the biggest ships or the most advanced weapons, but they had something no other civilization seemed to possess: the refusal to accept extinction as fate. There were still arguments, of course. Some world leaders wanted to join the evacuation. They argued that saving part of humanity was better than losing everyone. Yet the people spoke louder than politics. Billions voted to stay. They chose to fight together, not survive apart. The broadcasts from alien worlds became fewer each day. One by one, those signals fell silent. At first, people wondered if the others had found safety somewhere far away. Later, they realized the truth: they hadn't escaped at all. Whatever was coming had reached them, and there were no survivors to send messages back. That realization should have broken hope, yet it only hardened it. In the cold darkness of space, massive construction rings formed around Earth. New types of weapons were installed, combining human creativity with stolen fragments of alien technology. Engineers invented energy barriers and experimental drones that could mimic enemy signals. Humanity was learning faster than ever, as if fear itself had become fuel. People on Earth would look up at the night sky and see glowing lines from orbital defenses crossing the horizon. To them, it wasn't frightening, it was beautiful. It meant they were ready. Meanwhile, small human fleets patrolled the borders of their territory, scanning the void for any sign of the enemy. They found wreckage from alien ships, torn apart and drifting silently. The blackened metal was unlike anything seen before, burned by weapons that didn't use fire, energy, or matter as humans understood it. The sight was haunting. Still, they collected samples and sent them home for study. Scientists worked tirelessly, their eyes red from lack of sleep. They wanted to understand what kind of power could destroy whole planets so easily. Some theories said it wasn't even a living species, but a swarm of self-replicating machines left behind by an ancient civilization. Others believed it was something worse, a force of nature, not conscious but still destructive. Whatever it was getting closer. Late one night, as a cold storm rolled across Earth, people gathered in front of their screens to watch a global broadcast. The World Defense Council appeared, its members standing together under the flag of a united Earth. The message was short and simple. Every species fled, the spokesperson said, but we are not every species. We are human. We have one home, one world, one family. We stand together. We fight for all. The transmission echoed through the colonies and stations, reaching even the smallest outposts. Many cried. Many cheered. In that moment, fear turned into something else: belief. From that day on, the universe would remember humanity, not for its power, but for its choice. When everyone else had run, they had stayed. Weeks passed. The air grew thick with tension as the enemy's advance drew near. Yet daily life continued. Farmers still harvested crops. Teachers still taught children, reminding them that courage wasn't the absence of fear, but the decision to keep going despite it. Soldiers wrote letters home, promising to return even if they knew they might not. Somewhere in orbit, a young pilot looked out the window of her fighter craft, watching Earth slowly rotate below. She whispered a quiet prayer, not for victory but for strength, for every soul on that planet counting on them to hold the line. Then came the message from the Deep Space Scouts, a whisper through static. They're coming. The stars outside Earth's window flickered like dying candles. The night sky that had always felt peaceful now looked alive with movement, shadows within shadows. Humanity stood at the edge of something far greater than any war it had ever known. Still, there was no panic, no chaos. Just steady breaths, steady hands, and hearts that refused to break. Across every screen, one phrase appeared again and again, glowing like a promise. The galaxy that once called itself united was now broken. The great alliance of civilizations built over hundreds of years had shattered the moment true fear entered the stars. Every promise of cooperation, every treaty signed in peace, meant nothing when survival was on the line. One by one, the member species abandoned the Alliance's command centers, taking their fleets and fleeing into the unknown. What was once a network of hope had become a collection of empty stations and unanswered distress calls. Among all the chaos, humanity stood alone. Messages poured in from across the galaxy, pleas, warnings, and sometimes insults. Many alien leaders begged humanity to retreat, saying Earth's defenses would crumble like paper before the coming storm. Some called them foolish. Others pitied them. But not one offered to stay and fight beside them. At first, human leaders tried to reason with their allies. They sent transmissions filled with logic and courage, asking the other species to stand firm. "If we run, we'll be hunted one by one," they warned. "If we fight together, we may survive." The reply came from a distant world already half evacuated. "You humans don't understand. This enemy doesn't fight to win, it erases. There will be no survivors to tell the story." That was the final message from that planet. Hours later, it went dark forever. The silence that followed hurt more than any weapon. Humanity realized they were truly alone now. The galaxy had turned its back, leaving them as the last defenders of a home that seemed far too small against the vast blackness closing in. Yet strangely, that loneliness didn't crush them. It strengthened them. In the command rooms orbiting Earth, tension filled the air, but so did determination. Officers looked at the screens showing abandoned sectors and whispered to each other. They all ran. "So it's up to us now." No one needed orders to understand what that meant. The Alliance was gone. Humanity would fight alone. The outer colonies reported strange signals at the edges of their systems. Space distortions, flickers of light where none should exist. Drones sent to investigate never returned. Each disappearance confirmed the same truth. The threat was getting closer. On the lunar base, scientists continued studying the fragments recovered from destroyed alien ships. The data was incomplete and terrifying. Whatever was coming wasn't simply a fleet, it was a force. It devoured energy, dismantled technology, and left nothing behind. No debris, no radiation, no trace of life. Just emptiness. Still, humans refused to give up. They had faced extinction before, not from cosmic threats, but from their own mistakes. They had rebuilt from ashes more times than anyone could count. Now they would do it again, even if it meant building hope from the smallest spark. Everywhere across human space, something remarkable happened. Instead of arguing or hiding, people began working together like never before. Nations dropped their rivalries. Corporations opened their resources. Colonies that once competed now shared everything they had. Humanity had stopped being divided by borders. They were united by survival. Engineers on Mars designed new defense grids from recycled parts. Shipyards in orbit around Jupiter built massive carriers meant to fight in deep space. On Earth, volunteers lined up in thousands to join construction, logistics, and training. Even the artists and storytellers played their part. They filled the networks with songs and messages reminding everyone of what humanity was fighting for: family, home, memory, and the simple will to exist. Across alien communications channels, observers couldn't understand it. Why were humans staying? What kind of species looked at an unstoppable enemy and decided to fight anyway? Some whispered in disbelief, calling humanity reckless. Others began to feel shame for abandoning them. Meanwhile, the remnants of the broken alliance continued to drift through deep space. A few alien ships stopped to send encrypted transmissions to Earth. Their messages were filled with regret. "We cannot come back. We do not have your courage." On Earth, those messages were quietly archived but never answered. Humanity didn't have time for pity. Inside the main defense station, the command team monitored the growing darkness spreading through space. They could see stars blinking out on the screens, worlds lost without a single word of warning. One night, the sensors picked up something unusual: a massive fleet moving across the void. At first, people cheered, thinking it might be the returning alliance. But as the data cleared, the truth struck hard. It was not a rescue fleet. It was the enemy. A wave of silence filled the room. No one moved, no one spoke. Then a calm voice said, "So it begins." Humanity had prepared for this moment. Every ship was armed. Every outpost was ready. The first line of defense activated, lighting up the darkness around the solar system with shields and detection arrays. Back on Earth, ordinary people continued their lives under the same sky that now held the weight of an approaching storm. Parents tucked their children into bed and whispered stories of bravery. Farmers planted crops even though they weren't sure there would be a next harvest. Everyone found their own way to keep hope alive. Still, the news of the broken alliance spread everywhere. People asked questions. Why did they leave us? Did we do something wrong? Can we really fight this alone? The government didn't lie. They told the truth. The others fled because they were afraid. Humanity stayed because someone had to. The words hit hard, but they also ignited something deep inside people. Pride replaced fear. No one wanted to be remembered as the species that ran. Even the AIs that managed logistics began showing signs of what their creators called human spirit. They prioritized saving civilians, not because they were programmed to, but because they believed it was right. Soldiers started calling the machines crew, not units. It was as if everything touched by humanity had inherited that stubborn spark of survival. As the days passed, the enemy's presence grew stronger. Strange lights flickered beyond Neptune's orbit. Communication relays stopped responding. The galaxy seemed to be holding its breath. Meanwhile, small scout ships continued to search the void, hoping to find any remaining allies. They discovered abandoned alien worlds, vast cities left behind, their towers crumbling in silence. One crew reported finding a message carved into the surface of a deserted moon. "Forgive us." That discovery shook people deeply. It showed that even those who ran had known what they left behind. Yet it also fueled humanity's anger. They refused to become another message carved in stone. On Earth, the main council gathered again. There were no fancy uniforms, no decorations, just tired faces and determined eyes. They knew they couldn't count on anyone else. Every plan now depended on human hands. "Let the galaxy call us foolish," one of them said. "Let them think we are doomed. If we fall standing." That statement spread like lightning. It appeared on banners, posters, and the sides of ships. It wasn't an order. It was a promise. Across the stars, alien refugees watched in disbelief as Earth prepared to stand its ground. Some began sending small supplies, medicine, metals, data cores, as if trying to make peace with their guilt. Humanity accepted them, not out of need, but out of kindness. They would never hold hate for those who were afraid. They simply didn't have time for it. The universe around them was changing fast. What had once been full of trade, light, and communication was now a dark, silent expanse. The stars themselves seemed dimmer. Yet Earth still glowed blue and bright, a fragile but defiant light against the darkness. In that fragile glow, billions of hearts beat with one rhythm. Every worker tightening a bolt, every pilot checking a weapon system, every scientist staring at a screen, they all shared the same thought. We are the last line. Even the oldest veterans of Earth's past wars said they had never seen unity like this before. There were no borders, no divisions, no different flags, just one world and one mission, to stand for life itself. As the next transmission came in from the edge of the solar system, people gathered once more to listen. Static filled the air. Then a faint voice said, "They've reached the border." No ships survived contact. Silence followed. Then slowly, every station on Earth's network lit up in confirmation. Shields activated, weapons charged, fleets took position. The galaxy might have abandoned humanity, but humanity had not abandoned itself. As Earth's night turned to dawn, the planet's horizon burned gold under the rising sun. From orbit, the light reflected off the armor of thousands of human ships waiting in formation. The sight was breathtaking, a world ready to fight not for conquest, but for existence. While the rest of the universe fled into hiding, humanity took its place in history as the species that refused to bow to fear. When the first enemy signal crossed into human space, one phrase echoed across every channel, whispered by millions of voices at once. The days turned into weeks, and the fear that once filled every heart slowly transformed into determination. Humanity had accepted the truth. They were on their own now. No one was coming to help. The other species had fled to the far edges of the galaxy, leaving behind only silence and empty promises. Yet the humans didn't curse them, didn't waste time blaming anyone. They knew what they had to do: prepare. Every world that still carried human life became part of the great effort. From the cold colonies near Jupiter to the dusty mining bases on Mars, every hand went to work. The noise of engines, drills, and machinery filled the stations. People no longer worked for money or rank. They worked for survival. Every screw tightened, every circuit welded, every weapon built carried the same purpose: to protect what was left of humanity. On Earth, the skies were alive with light. Massive ships hovered above cities, carrying materials to the orbiting shipyards. The oceans were full of transport vessels moving fuel and resources. Even the smallest towns contributed, sending food, minerals, or manpower to the defense centers. No one waited for orders. People simply found ways to help. Scientists stayed awake for days, studying the strange energy readings left behind by the enemy's destruction of other worlds. They discovered traces of radiation unlike anything known before, patterns that pulsed like a heartbeat. It wasn't random, it was almost alive. The realization chilled everyone who heard it. This wasn't just a weapon, it was something that learned, something that adapted. Still, they refused to give up. Instead, they found ways to use that data to their advantage. They developed shields that could bend under pressure instead of breaking. They created drones that could mimic the same energy signature to confuse the enemy's sensors. Bit by bit, humanity turned fear into invention. In the great orbital factories above Earth, the first dreadnoughts took shape, massive warships longer than entire cities. Each one was designed not only to fight but to survive. Inside their metal walls, engineers carved words of hope, prayers, and the names of families they fought for. Those ships became more than weapons. They were symbols of human endurance. Down on Earth, daily life continued, though it was no longer ordinary. People lived with the constant sound of sirens, updates, and warnings. Yet the streets were calm. Children played in reinforced shelters, drawing pictures of spaceships and heroes. Teachers told stories of Earth's history, how humans had faced disaster before and always risen again. There was fear, yes, but it no longer controlled them. It had turned into strength. As the days passed, the sky grew darker, not from clouds, but from the massive defense rings being built around the planet. The rings glowed softly at night like halos of light protecting the world. From the ground, they looked beautiful, a reminder that even in the face of extinction, humans could create something incredible. Messages poured in from across the remaining colonies. We're ready. The mines are producing. The carriers are armed. The network connecting humanity pulsed with life. A sign that they were no longer just a species, they were one unified force. Everywhere, people spoke of the same thing, the coming storm. The phrase spread like wildfire. News anchors said it, soldiers whispered it, and scientists wrote it in their reports. Everyone knew it was coming, though no one could say exactly when. It felt like waiting for a wave they couldn't see, only sense. Then one night, the first signs appeared. Deep space scanners picked up strange distortions far beyond the edge of the solar system. It looked like light bending in impossible directions. The readings made no sense. Gravity, radiation, and temperature all fluctuated wildly. The scientists who saw it went silent, realizing it matched the patterns from destroyed alien sectors. The enemy was near. Instead of panic, the news brought clarity. The waiting was over. Humanity now had something to fight. Across every colony, readiness alerts sounded. Fleets began moving into formation. The vast network of satellites and defense platforms activated, forming an invisible web around human space. Pilots checked their ships. Engineers made final adjustments. Medics prepared for what everyone knew would be a storm unlike any other. The atmosphere on Earth was strange, quiet but heavy, calm but expectant. People didn't cry or run. They went about their tasks with quiet purpose. Families gathered to record messages to loved ones in case communication was lost. They didn't speak about death. They spoke about why they were standing their ground. Old soldiers, the ones who had seen past wars, trained the young recruits. They didn't promise victory. They promised meaning. "We're not fighting because we think we'll win," one of them said during a broadcast. "We're fighting because someone has to stand. Someone has to draw the line." That message spread faster than any government order. It became humanity's heartbeat. Meanwhile, in the command centers orbiting Earth, the Council made a final decision. There would be no evacuation, no backup plan. Every ship, every soldier, every scientist would stay. Earth would not be abandoned. The decision was met with silence at first. Then, across the communication channels, people began to cheer. Not because they wanted war, but because they finally had something certain. No more hesitation, no more doubt. Humanity would stand and fight. Weeks passed as the final defenses came online. Around the moon, giant cannons pointed toward the stars. In the asteroid belt, stealth mines floated, waiting for the enemy's arrival. Fleets stood in formation like an iron wall guarding the homeworld. In every control room, officers watched the same dark horizon. The scanners flickered with static. Everyone could feel it. The calm before the storm. Then came the message from the deep space probes. Short, simple, terrifying. They're here. The transmission cut out immediately after. No one knew what destroyed the probe, but they didn't need to. The war had begun. Within minutes, the outer stations confirmed massive gravitational disturbances. Something enormous was approaching, too fast, too powerful, too silent. The fleet commanders ordered all ships to defensive positions. Lights across the solar system dimmed as power was rerouted to weapons and shields. People gathered near windows, looking up at the night sky that had suddenly changed. The stars flickered as if the universe itself was holding its breath. Down on Earth, children were told to stay inside. Yet some couldn't resist looking out, their small faces glowing in the reflection of the defense rings. They didn't see fear, they saw beauty. The lights in the sky were their protectors. Inside the bunkers and command rooms, tension was thick. The first wave of the enemy had not yet appeared, but the sensors showed it clearly. It was vast, far beyond anything ever recorded, and still, humanity stood ready, in one final act of unity. The leaders sent a message across the galaxy. It wasn't a plea for help. It wasn't a call for surrender. It was a declaration. This is Earth, we know what's coming. We are not afraid. To those who ran, may you find safety. To those who stayed, stand tall. Humanity endures. The message spread far beyond the borders of human space. Refugee ships in distant galaxies heard it. Some wept, some turned back. For the first time since the Great Flight began, hope flickered again. Back home, the skies thundered as the first human dreadnoughts moved into orbit. Their engines glowed like small suns, and their hulls reflected the light of Earth below. People across the world stopped to watch them rise. There were no cheers this time, only quiet pride. The storm was close now. Everyone could feel it. On a small colony at the edge of the system, an old mechanic tightened the final bolt on a defense turret and looked up. The stars above were trembling. He took a deep breath and whispered, "Let it come." His words carried the spirit of billions. When the darkness finally appeared on the scanners, an endless wall moving faster than light itself, there was no scream, no panic. Humanity was ready. The soldiers checked their weapons, the fleets locked formation, and every heart beat with the same rhythm. They knew they might not survive. But they also knew they would never run. As the first flashes of light appeared in the void, Earth's defenses came alive. Energy shields shimmered. Cannons powered up. The voice of the Central Command echoed across every channel. "Hold your positions. Humanity stands." And so the gathering storm arrived, not with silence, but with fire and courage. While the rest of the galaxy hid in the shadows, humanity stood beneath the burning sky, prepared to face the impossible. Because even when the stars themselves seemed to fall, one truth remained clear. The silence before the first strike was heavier than thunder. Every radar, every scanner, every human heart waited for the moment that would decide their fate. For weeks, the sky had remained tense like a held breath, filled with whispers of static and strange energy waves. The storm that humanity had been preparing for was finally here. Then it happened. The deep space alarms screamed across every station. Red lights flashed through corridors. The message came in clear and sharp. Contact confirmed. The enemy had entered human space. The data was terrifying. What appeared on the scanners was not a fleet like any known before. It was a shadow, a moving mass of dark energy that swallowed light itself. It wasn't made of metal or matter. It was something else, something alive. Wherever it passed, power grids flickered and sensors went blind. Yet even with fear pressing down on every chest, humanity stood ready. In orbit around Mars, the first human defense fleet was already in position. Thousands of ships floated in formation, their hulls shining with blue light from charged shields. Inside each vessel, the crews were silent, listening to the steady hum of engines. They all knew what was coming. "Hold your positions," came the voice from Central Command. "No one fires until confirmed visual." Seconds turned into minutes. The dark mass approached, tearing through the void. Then the screens lit up, visual contact. What they saw froze everyone for a heartbeat. The enemy fleet was enormous, stretching beyond what the cameras could capture. It looked like a wall of black mist, shifting and changing shape with flashes of light inside it, like lightning trapped in smoke. The order came through. Engage. Every cannon, every missile bay, every laser turret opened fire at once. Space lit up like a storm of stars as thousands of projectiles shot forward. The sound of weapons echoed through the ship's metal walls. For a brief moment, hope sparked in every heart, but the hope vanished as quickly as it came. The weapons passed through the dark mass as if hitting smoke. Explosions flickered, but the enemy didn't slow down. It absorbed the attack like the void itself was eating the light. "Adjust coordinates." "Redirect fire!" shouted the controllers. The fleet shifted formation, trying to surround the enemy from different angles. More weapons fired. This time, small flashes of success appeared, tiny bursts where the darkness seemed to tear apart. That was all the encouragement humanity needed. The dreadnoughts moved forward, their engines roaring. These massive ships carried the heaviest weapons ever built by human hands. They fired beams so bright that even Earth's night sky lit up faintly. The beams cut through the darkness, leaving glowing cracks that looked like wounds in the enemy's form. It was working. But then, the enemy struck back without warning. Arcs of energy shot out from the dark mass, moving faster than light. Entire human ships vanished in silence. No explosion, no debris, just gone. The crews who saw it couldn't understand what had happened. It was as if space itself had swallowed them. Panic began to ripple through the fleets, but the commanders' voices cut through the noise. "Stay calm. Focus fire on the weak points." Humans had faced fear before. They had been outnumbered, outgunned, and still fought on. This time would be no different. The outer defense lines formed a wall protecting the inner fleets. Smaller ships darted between them, drawing enemy fire, sacrificing themselves to keep the larger vessels alive. Every life lost bought another second for Earth. Down on the planet, people watched the battle unfold in the sky. The defense rings glowed red as they fired massive energy bursts into space. The explosions painted the horizon in strange colors. From the ground, it looked like a new sunrise, a violent, burning dawn that covered the world in trembling light. The news networks streamed the battle live, though no one spoke much. There were no long speeches, only quiet updates and the sound of hearts breaking. Still, the fight continued. In orbit around the moon, the Second Defense Fleet prepared to engage. They had been waiting for their moment. As the first line weakened, the second moved in. Dozens of ships dove straight into the darkness, their engines leaving trails of blue fire. They unleashed their full power, detonating thousands of charges deep inside the enemy mass. The shockwaves lit up the void. For the first time, the enemy recoiled. The black mist twisted violently, breaking apart into smaller fragments. The sensors confirmed it. Damage detected. A cheer rose across the command channels. Humanity had done it. They had hurt the enemy. The cheering didn't last long. The fragments of darkness began to reform, merging back into one shape. The energy readings spiked higher than before. It was learning. It was adapting. Then it unleashed a second wave. A blast of energy spread outward, disabling every ship within its reach. Systems went offline. Screens went dark. Communication cut out completely. For a moment, there was nothing but silence. Cold and terrifying silence. Then slowly, one voice broke through the static. "We're still here." Engines restarting. The crews scrambled to repair systems, to fight back. Sparks flew in the control rooms as humans worked with bare hands, refusing to surrender even as their ships shook apart. Engineers rerouted power manually, ignoring injuries, sweat pouring down their faces. Every second mattered. Finally, one ship managed to fire again. Then another. Then hundreds more. The sky once again filled with light. Humanity refused to stop. Even when the odds made no sense, they fought harder. As the battle raged, small groups of surviving ships regrouped behind Mars. There they launched experimental weapons, prototypes never tested before. They had been built in secret, combining alien and human technology. The weapons fired bursts of pure magnetic energy designed to disrupt the enemy's form. When they hit, the effect was immediate. The dark mass flickered violently, parts of it breaking apart and dissolving into nothing. For the first time, the enemy screamed, a low, vibrating sound that echoed through the void. Humanity had found a weakness. Every ship that could still move turned its weapons to target the weakened sections. The command center on Earth broadcasted the same message to all fleets. "Concentrate fire. Push them back." The dark mass began retreating inch by inch. The combined light of human firepower turned the void into a glowing storm. For a brief, miraculous moment, it seemed as if victory was possible. Then, the energy readings spiked again. From deep within the darkness, Something enormous began to emerge, a core pulsing with crimson light. It was far bigger than any ship, like a living planet of energy and rage. The first wave had only been its shadow. The real enemy was here. The human fleets tried to reposition, but the core's gravity pulled them in. Ships strained against the force, engines burning red hot. The command networks filled with noise and static. Still, no one gave the order to retreat. Humanity had made a promise: no running. Even as ships were torn apart, they fired until the last second. Ground stations on Earth launched everything they had. Massive cannons from the defense rings fired continuous beams into the core. Explosions filled the void, lighting up the sky for millions watching below. Finally, after hours of chaos, the core began to dim. It wasn't destroyed, but it was weakened. The remaining human ships pulled back to defensive positions, battered and broken but still standing. When the transmission from the fleet reached Earth, there was silence. Then came the message: we held them. They're hurt. We're still here. On the surface, people cried, cheered, and hugged each other. For the first time, humanity had faced the unknown and survived the first strike. The cost was heavy, thousands of ships lost, countless lives gone, but they had proven something no one else in the galaxy believed possible. They could fight back. As the damaged ships limped home, the skies over Earth were filled with light once more. The battle was far from over, but the message was clear. When the universe sent its worst, humanity didn't fall. They fought, they endured, and they stood their ground. Because when every other species had fled, only humanity had the courage to face the storm head-on. And in that burning sky, the legend of human defiance was born. The battlefield had gone quiet after the first great clash, but it wasn't peace that filled the silence. It was the weight of loss. The stars that once shone brightly now seemed dimmer, hidden behind the ashes of burning ships and the trails of broken metal floating across the blackness. The first battle had been won only in spirit. Humanity had survived, yes, but at a price that no one could ever forget. Every surviving ship returned home damaged. Some had entire decks missing. Others were barely holding together through emergency seals. Inside, the crew members were silent, staring at the empty seats where friends once sat. No one spoke much. Words couldn't reach the depth of what they had seen. When the ships reached orbit around Earth, the planet below looked peaceful, as if unaware of what had just happened above. Blue oceans shimmered, clouds rolled slowly across the continents, and the city lights glowed faintly beneath the night sky. It was beautiful, painfully beautiful, because everyone knew they were fighting to protect that peace. The recovery teams began their work immediately. Space stations turned into makeshift hospitals. Engineers repaired broken ships, welding torn metal with trembling hands. Scientists studied every fragment of the dark enemy that had been collected, trying to understand what it was and how to destroy it for good. The biggest question haunted everyone. Was the enemy gone, or were they just waiting to return? No one could answer. On Earth, leaders gathered to discuss the future. There were arguments, long nights, and endless debates. Some wanted to strengthen defenses. Others believed humanity should seek peace before it was too late. But deep down, everyone knew one truth: the enemy wouldn't stop until humanity was gone. So they prepared for the next strike. Factories that once built civilian ships were now building war machines. Massive shipyards floated above the moon, where thousands of workers labored day and night creating a new generation of human battleships. These new vessels were stronger, faster, and smarter. They carried weapons powered by both science and sheer human determination. The engineers didn't just follow blueprints, they created them from scratch, mixing technology from the ruins of old alien ships that had once invaded human borders. It was risky, but necessity gave birth to invention. Humanity had learned something from the darkness they could adapt to. Meanwhile, on the ground, the world began to change. People didn't live in fear anymore, they lived with purpose. Children studied the stars not just as points of light, but as future front lines. Every person on Earth felt connected, as if the whole planet shared one heartbeat. The idea of borders, nations, and divisions slowly faded. Humanity had one identity now: survivors. Months passed, and the space around Earth grew busy again. The scars of the first battle were still visible, but hope began to rise among the people. The news networks showed footage of the new fleet taking shape, ships gleaming silver under the sun, their hulls marked with the words "for humanity." Still, every night when people looked at the sky, they wondered, would the darkness return? Their answer came sooner than anyone expected. A faint signal reached Earth's outposts in the outer system. It was weak, broken, and filled with static, but one phrase came through clearly. They're back. The enemy was moving again. This time not one shadow, but hundreds. The void beyond Jupiter began to twist and glow as if a storm was building inside the fabric of space itself. Command centers went on high alert. Messages were sent to every fleet. Engines roared to life. Across the world, every screen flashed the same message. All units, prepare for contact. Humanity didn't panic. They were ready. The new fleet, stronger than ever, rose from orbit like a shining wall of light. Thousands of ships moved into formation, their engines painting trails across the black sky. The old veterans, who had survived the first battle, stood side by side with new recruits, young, determined, and unafraid. As the fleet spread across the solar system, the first wave of darkness appeared. It looked different this time, more focused, more organized. The enemy had evolved. The battle began before anyone could breathe. Lasers cut through space. Explosions bloomed like silent fireflowers. Ships darted in and out of formation, firing everything they had. The sound of commands echoed through the ships. Hold the line. Keep the formation tight. On Earth, billions watched the fight unfold on their screens. Every flash of light in the sky carried meaning, each one a symbol of resistance. No one turned away. Children clutched their parents' hands. Old men prayed silently, and the entire planet held its breath together. At first, the enemy's attack was overwhelming. Ships were struck down one after another, and the darkness pressed closer. The void was filled with wreckage and blinding light. It felt like the first battle all over again. Chaos, fear, and loss. But then something changed. Human coordination improved. The new ships, equipped with magnetic disruptors, began hitting the enemy's weak points. Where their energy fields used to absorb attacks, now they cracked under pressure. For the first time, pieces of the dark entities started to dissolve completely. A cheer broke out across every channel. Humanity was finally hitting back hard. The command center ordered the main fleet to advance. The dreadnoughts fired their heaviest weapons, sending beams that cut through the enemy like lightning through fog. Each hit sent shockwaves across the void. The enemy was forced to retreat, but not far. They gathered again, forming a giant wall of swirling energy. Then something unexpected happened. The enemy began transmitting signals, patterns of sound and vibration. It wasn't random. The scientists on Earth analyzed it quickly and made a chilling discovery. It wasn't a weapon. It was language. The enemy was communicating. For the first time, the realization spread among the commanders. They weren't just fighting monsters. They were fighting intelligent beings capable of thought and purpose. The world froze for a moment. What were they saying? Were they surrendering? Or warning? Before anyone could decide, the signal ended, and the enemy attacked again with double the power. It became clear they weren't asking for peace. They were declaring total war. The human fleets pushed back with everything they had. They no longer fought for victory. They fought for survival. Ships that were too damaged to move turned themselves into living shields, protecting the rest. The crews didn't retreat. They stayed and fought until their power cores burned out. One ship managed to break deep into the enemy formation. Its captain ordered the final strike, detonating a massive energy bomb at point-blank range. The explosion tore through the dark mass, creating a gap wide enough for the other ships to push through. The command came fast. All fleets charge. Every remaining ship surged forward, firing non-stop. The sky burned white. The energy waves reached all the way to Earth's orbit, lighting up the planet's atmosphere. For a few seconds, it felt like the sun had risen twice. When the light faded, the darkness was gone. Sensors picked up no movement, no readings, no sign of the enemy, just silence. Everyone waited, afraid to believe it was over. Minutes passed, then hours. Slowly, messages began to pour in from the surviving ships. The voice that came through was shaky but clear. We did it. They're gone. The control rooms erupted in cheers. People cried, shouted, and hugged each other. Across Earth, fireworks lit up the skies. The war wasn't over forever, but humanity had achieved something no other species in the galaxy ever had. They stood their ground and pushed the darkness back. The fleets began returning home. carrying the scars of battle and the pride of survival. For the first time in human history, every country, every colony, every outpost celebrated together. There were no sides anymore, no divisions, only one united humanity. The scientists continued studying the remains of the enemy energy, searching for answers. What were they? Where did they come from? Why attack only humanity? No one knew yet. But one thing was certain. If the darkness ever returned, humanity would be ready again. The people had learned something powerful from all of it. Courage was not the absence of fear. It was the choice to face it even when everything seemed lost. The stars above no longer looked cold and distant. They looked like promises waiting to be fulfilled. Because now, humanity knew its place among them. They weren't just survivors, they were protectors, guardians of light in a universe filled with shadows. And as the world slept peacefully under the silver glow of the moon, a single message echoed across every network, every heart, every home. When every species fled, only humanity stood and fought, and humanity endured. The war was over, but silence never felt this heavy before. The stars looked calm again, yet every person who stared at them could still feel the echoes of battle deep in their hearts. Space was full of wreckage, burnt ships, broken metal, drifting memories of those who had given everything to keep humanity alive. It was victory, yes, but not a cheerful one. It was the kind of victory that came wrapped in loss and exhaustion. Earth's night sky glowed faintly with traces of light from the destroyed enemy fleet. Some called it the Shield of Souls. To others, it was a reminder that peace had a price. Families across the world waited for news from the fleets, hoping that the people they loved had made it home. Every returning ship carried both survivors and silence. When the first ship entered Earth's orbit, the entire planet watched. It was half broken, its armor scorched, its lights flickering, yet the sight of it sparked something powerful in every human heart. That ship was proof that they had made it. Humanity had fought the greatest darkness the universe had ever seen, and survived. The cities came alive again, but they had changed. People no longer talked about countries or borders. They talked about humanity as one family. The old divisions seemed meaningless now. The war had united everyone in a way that politics and words never could. Across the globe, memorials began to rise. In the center of every major city, walls of light were built with the names of the fallen. At night, people came and stood silently before them. Some cried. Some prayed. Others simply stood there, letting the glowing light wash over them, remembering that courage had saved them all. The leaders of Earth decided to form something new, a council that represented not nations, but humanity itself. They called it the Human Unity Accord. Its goal was simple: to make sure the sacrifices of the war would never be forgotten, and to ensure the world would never again be caught unprepared. The first meeting of the Accord was held in a great glass hall overlooking the ocean. There were no fancy speeches or long introductions, just quiet faces worn by fear and relief. The first words spoken were simple. We survived. Now we rebuild. And so they began. The rebuilding wasn't easy. Half of the defense fleets were gone. Many of the orbital stations were damaged beyond repair. The moon's surface still bore the scars of the last battle, and Mars had entire cities left empty and silent. Yet for every broken thing, there was someone ready to fix it. Engineers, scientists, doctors, and builders from every corner of Earth came together. They worked side by side without complaint. The old rivalry between nations vanished. There was no us or them anymore, only we. The first step was to bring home the survivors scattered across space. Small rescue crafts went out day after day, searching for any life signal among the wreckage fields. Many times they returned empty-handed, but sometimes they found a miracle, a faint distress beacon, a voice over the static, a ship that had somehow held together long enough to be found. Each rescue felt like a victory of its own. Months passed, and slowly the wounds began to heal. The fear that had once haunted every dream started to fade, replaced by a quiet determination. Humanity had faced the darkness and had not only endured, it had learned. The scientists who studied the enemy remains discovered something strange. The dark energy was not just destructive, it was alive in its own way. It responded to energy and thoughts, adapting to patterns. It wasn't pure evil. It was something ancient, something lost, maybe even misunderstood. That discovery changed everything. Instead of destroying every trace of the enemy, Humanity began studying it carefully and respectfully. The goal was not to make new weapons, but to understand, to learn how to prevent another war, how to protect others, and how to uncover the truth about what had really happened. One day, a transmission arrived from deep space. It wasn't from the enemy, but from another civilization, one that had fled when the darkness first appeared. Their message was full of disbelief and awe. They had seen what humanity had done. "You fought," the message said. "When we ran, you stood. Because of you, the darkness has faded. You are the light now." Those words spread across the world like wildfire. It wasn't pride that people felt. It was something deeper: responsibility. Humanity realized that they had become a symbol for all life across the galaxy. They were no longer the youngest or weakest race. They were the ones who refused to bow down. The Council declared a new mission, not one of war, but of hope. Humanity would send ships beyond the solar system, not as conquerors, but as protectors and explorers. They would help rebuild other worlds that had fallen. They would share what they had learned. They would become the shield for those who couldn't fight. The first of these ships was called Dawn Voyager. It was massive, yet graceful, built with both human steel and fragments of the enemy's strange energy. It wasn't just a ship. It was a message, a promise written in light and courage. As the day of launch arrived, billions watched the skies once again. The ship lifted from the ground slowly, engines glowing like twin suns. It rose higher and higher until it vanished into the clouds. People cheered, cried, and waved toward the heavens. It was the beginning of a new chapter, not of war, but of unity. Years passed, and the memory of the Great War became legend. Children grew up hearing stories of how their ancestors stood against the impossible and won. Schools taught about courage, unity, and the cost of peace. Monuments stood not to glorify battle, but to remind everyone that peace must always be protected. Yet, deep in space, humanity's fleets kept watch. The darkness had not returned, but no one forgot what it had done. Humans had learned that peace wasn't the absence of war. It was the constant effort to defend what was right. Every year, on the same night the war had ended, the world went dark for 1 minute. No lights, no sounds, no machines, just silence. It was called the Minute of Memory. People looked at the stars and whispered the same words together. "We stood when all others fled." The phrase became more than history. It became a promise to every generation that followed. The universe slowly began to rebuild around humanity's example. The species that had once run away returned, seeking friendship and guidance. They came to Earth not as rulers or traitors, but as allies. Together they built a new alliance of life, something stronger than any weapon. Humanity had gone from being the frightened children of the galaxy to its guardians. They didn't seek power, only balance. Whenever they found a lost world or a new species struggling to survive, they offered help, not dominance. The darkness had once tried to divide and destroy life, but now, because of humanity's courage, life had become more connected than ever before. In time, people stopped fearing the stars. The fear had turned into wonder again. Children dreamed of becoming explorers, scientists, and captains who would travel beyond known space to see what else waited in the great unknown. The wars of the past slowly faded into memory, but one truth remained clear in every human heart. Bravery was not just about fighting. It was about standing firm for what mattered most, even when hope seemed lost. The last surviving veterans of the war often said something that became famous in every language. "We were ordinary people who faced extraordinary fear. And we didn't run." That spirit became the core of human identity, the strength to endure, the heart to protect, the will to stand together no matter what came. And so, as new ships carried the next generation of explorers into the stars, they painted a small symbol on every hull, a single blue circle surrounded by light. It represented Earth, tiny yet bright, standing against the endless darkness. The stars shimmered quietly as the ships disappeared one by one into the distance. Somewhere far away, maybe the remnants of the old enemy still lingered, watching. Maybe they even understood now what humanity had tried to defend. For the first time in galactic history, life had something to believe in. A story that began with fear, but ended with hope. Every species fled. Only humanity stood and fought, and because of that, the universe would never be the same again.